Welcome into another episode of Sig Daddy's Wrestling Show. I'm your host, Skylar Sig Daddy Sigmund, and this is the NXT TakeOver WarGames 2020 review. Before I get into the review, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you get your podcast if you like the podcast, and if you would be so awesome if you would leave me a 5-star review if you really, really like the show. Lots of content coming your way here real soon, including the look back on AEW Dynamite's first year on television. Give you the good, the bad, the ugly, and if they were able to differentiate themselves enough from WWE. Also, coming up here in just a few weeks will be the year in review. And I'm going to do kind of something special for that. I'm going to do the year in review. It'll be awards. So I'll be doing match of the year, pay-per-view of the year, so on and so forth. Do some worst ofs maybe too. Throw a little bit in there. I'm brainstorming it right now as we speak, so I'll let you know more about that when the time comes, but it'll be coming up later in the month. Also coming up this month will be my TLC 2020 pay-per-view review, but let's get into this thing. And I gotta say this first and foremost, for NXT TakeOver WarGames, the commentary team, boy. Vic Joseph, Beth Phoenix, and Stu Bennett. Best commentary group in WWE. Period. Point blank. SmackDown doesn't stand a chance with Corey Graves and Michael Cole. Tom Phillips, Byron Saxton, and Samoa Joe, they don't measure up with this group. I love Samoa Joe to death. Honestly, that'd be a good addition to NXT, would be his commentary. But I gotta say, that's a great... This trio was really good this whole entire show. And I gotta say, the theme song to War Games, gosh, it was really good. War Pigs from Black Sabbath. Really, really, really good stuff. But let's get this thing rolling with the first match of the night on the War Games. NXT TakeOver. A team Shotzi Blackheart, Ember Moon, Rhea Ripley, and Io Shirai, the NXT Women's Champion, taking on Team Candice, LeRae, Dakota Kai, Raquel Gonzalez, and Toni Storm. So coming into this match, Team Shotzi was able to gain the advantage after Shotzi defeated Raquel in a ladder match on NXT this past week to gain the one-person advantage. And Shotzi, she comes out with a badass new tank. And it was Shotzi wanted to start things off, but Ember decided to put her hand in front of her and decides she will start off the match. It'll be Ember and Kai to start things off. And man, this thing got crazy eventually. But after a few minutes with Ember and Kai, Shotzi Blackheart is in next. She grabs a toolbox and a crowbar from under the ring. And Shotzi hits a flurry discus form, nice roundhouse, then a running senton. I'm just going to go through some key points of this match. Just entries, order of entries, and then kind of the bigger stuff that happens later on. Raquel in next. Moon and Blackheart meet her as she enters, but Gonzalez just lays waste to them all. And then Rhea comes in next. She dominates for Team Shotzi Blackheart. And Rhea ends up getting a hammer out of the toolbox and hits the midsection of Kai with it. A few minutes later, Toni Storm enters in next for Team Candice, and Toni gets the kendo sticks. And Toni is in there removing turnbuckle pads, whips Rhea into one of them. Rhea Ripley is a hell of a seller. She could sell anything like death, pretty much. She's very good. Very good at that. And that's why she's one of the up-and-comers. And then at one point, all 6 women are on the top turnbuckles in each ring. And both hit moves off the top. All women are down at this point. Io gets ready to come in. She's entering, and then she grabs a ladder from underneath the ring. She grabs a kendo stick, but then Raquel kicks the cage door into Shirai. Shirai just can't get in. Io grabs another ladder, a tug of war. Raquel wins, knocking Io into the plexiglass. So this is kind of the thing. They're trying to prevent Io from even getting into the match. The gamer for Team Shotzi, and Io's got to overcome some adversity to get in the cage. Io throws a chair or two in there. Io drop kicks a chair into Raquel, but Raquel prevents her again from entering the ring. Then Tony wraps her belt around the door. Io climbs. Raquel then powerbombs Shotzi Blackheart into the cage, which knocks Io off. Candice LeRae then comes in last. Candice and Io have a stare down, but then Indy Blackheart jumps Io from behind. It's Candice LeRae's muscle. I don't really would call it muscle, but it's kind of buddy. Indy Hartwell jumps Io from behind, throws Io into the barricade. LeRae and Hartwell throw trash cans into the cage. Hartwell then padlocks the door shut, but eventually Io gets to the top of the cage, puts a trash can on her, which is the image that will live on for a long time and probably will be shown in Io's Hall of Fame package one day. But it was really cool really cool sight. Io puts a freaking trash can over her and crossbodies everybody. Hits a crossbody on everybody. She literally puts the trash can over her body, hits a crossbody. It's freaking nuts. Then uses the hammer on everybody. And at one point, Ember Moon, this woman sets up two chairs. There's two chairs set up in the ring. And then we have Dakota Kai in the unfortunate position. She eats the Eclipse, Dakota Kai. She eats it onto two chairs. And Tony then hits Ember with a trash can to break up the pin. Few minutes later, Shotzi and LeRae are having a fight up the ladder, and Shotzi knocks LeRae off the ladder, and then Shotzi stands on top of the ladder. LeRae protects herself with a chair, which it looks like LeRae got hurt after this. Hope she's doing okay. Yeah, she looked like she hurt her arm after this match, but during this match, especially in that spot where Shotzi does a seated senton off the top of the cage, not the top of the cage, but off the top of the ladder onto LeRae, who had a chair on top of her, and that was pretty nuts. And then another nutsy spot was Raquel throwing Rio into the cage, knocking Io off the top rope, and this is the finish. Shirai hits let's go back a little bit here. Shirai hits the moonsault on Kai, then Tony spears Rhea to break up the pin. Raquel then throws Rhea into the cage, knocking Io off the top rope as Io was going for another moonsault, I think. And then Raquel counters a Hurricane Rana attempt between the cages, between the rings, and then powerbombs Shirai through a ladder that was wedged in between the two rings. It looked freaking painful as hell. And then Raquel covers, and that's it. So really, Raquel looks like she's going to be a star. Raquel looks like she's going to be the next one in line for Io Shirai's title. Team Candice wins here, and I got to say this match was freaking awesome. This was the best one of the show. First match was the best match on NXT TakeOver WarGames. Grade I'm going to give for this one is an A-. Brutality was top-notch here. And honestly, it was more brutal than the men's match later on. And Io Shirai, human highlight reel. NXT's women's division is head and shoulders above any women's division in the company and pretty much in the U.S. I got to say that. It's above Impact Wrestling. It's above Raw. It's above SmackDown. It's above AEW. It's like by a mile better than any women's division in the U.S. Period. Point blank. But man, this was a good match. The freaking Dakota Kai drop kick. Oh, I forgot to mention that. Dakota Kai did a double stomp off the top rope into Io Shirai, who was in the trash can, and she got wrecked. And Io almost couldn't get out of the dang trash can. And then the power bomb to end it was definitely brutal, and it's really good. Really, really, really good opener for NXT TakeOver WarGames. I'm going to give it an A- if I had mentioned it already. Then we get a little bit of a change of pace. Still, the brutality was there for this next match. It was Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa. This was hard-hitting. Definitely a lot of work to the neck of Tommaso Ciampa. He worked both of them, not work him, but Thatcher, he worked the injured ACL of Ciampa. These guys just beat the living crap out of each other, I'll say that. They beat the living crap out of each other, but Thatcher was going after the injured neck a lot during this match. Yep, and like I said, they just beat the living crap out of each other for about 15 minutes or so. And, man, these guys brought it. Boot in the corner by Ciampa, a bunch of running clotheslines. This is the later portions of the match. Actually, let's go a little bit forward here. But there's a bulldog choke by Ciampa. He gets it. And this is after a big knee from Ciampa. And then Thatcher's ear is bleeding bad. Ciampa kicks off the rope. Ciampa then punches the ear. Thatcher then pushes Ciampa in the rope to break the hold. Then German Ciampa. Rear mount by Thatcher. Beats Ciampa up. German from Thatcher. Thatcher would he hit multiple Germans during this match. Ciampa then escapes another German suplex attempt on the apron. Thatcher counters Ciampa's Willow's Bell attempt. Then Thatcher goes for uppercuts. Backslide by Ciampa. Thatcher goes right into the ropes. Traps Thatcher's arms in the ropes. Chops to Thatcher. Pump kick by Ciampa. Chokes Thatcher. Then hits Willow's Bell. The Hangman's DDT on Thatcher to get the win, and I'm going to give this match a B+. I honestly think a couple minutes could have been shaved off this match, but really, it was a slow build to the end, and it was just kind of brutal and hard to watch at times. Very hard-hitting, and the limb work was very, very good from Thatcher, and I'll say this with this. It's not going to be for everybody. I personally enjoyed it. I like limb work. I like the psychology aspect of it. And the constant attacking of the injured neck, the previously broken neck of Tommaso Ciampa. I got a lot of enjoyment out of this, but still could have used a couple of minutes shaved off of it. But pretty good match. I'm going to give it a B+. And earlier on in the show, Balor left a message saying all eyes go back on the Prince after WarGames, so things will get interesting here soon. And what might be the most bizarre matchup of the night was Dexter Lumis versus Cameron Grimes in a strap match, and it was the battle of the bizarre ones, as I think I called it. And I love Cameron Grimes, man. That guy is so extra, and I love it. They had a blindfold match a few weeks ago on NXT. And Grimes comes into the match. He's very insistent that he uses his strap or no strap at all. But then eventually, here's both straps that get involved. So he has the Grimes strap and then also the strap that was supposed to be used before Grimes denied it. Grimes ends up using it on Lumis and whips the living crap out of him. And actually blindfolds Lumis at one time with the strap. Not the strap, but the strap bag. He puts the strap bag over the eyes of Lumis, hits him with the bag that has the other strap in it, and as I said, blindfolds him and hits him with it and batters him with the thing. Lumis with a spine buster that would make Arn Anderson proud. It was a beautiful spine buster, I'll say. Eventually, Lumis yanks Grimes off the apron and makes him flip. Lumis whips Grimes with the strap, clothesline in the corner by Lumis. Grimes eventually brings a chair into play, beats Lumis is back with it. Grimes then takes a seat in the chair. Lumis pulls him in, fall away, slam by Lumis, nip up. Had me feeling like I was watching an Adam Page match for a second. They trade strikes. Grimes launches Lumis over the top rope. Lumis then heads up top. Grimes pulls him off. Flipping power slam by Grimes, which I don't know how the hell he did it. He defied all physics there. Hits it. Grimes whips Lumis with the strap once again. And then Lumis is seated in the chair, goes for the stomp. Lumis counters Grimes' attempt. They trade counters. Loomis trips Grimes with the strap, putting him face first into the chair that's sitting in the ring. Loomis then locks in his silence, the head and arm choke. Grimes tries to escape, but Loomis wraps the strap around the eyes of Grimes, and Grimes has no choice but to tap. I thought this was a pretty good strap match. These two guys are very, very bizarre. I like Loomis. I just don't know if he eventually goes up to the main roster, that this gimmick is going to work. It's not going to make him a main event star, but it could give him some longevity, but I don't know. But I thought this was a pretty good match, pretty good for a strap match. I liked that Loomis used Grimes' strategy. At one point, Grimes would blind Loomis with the strap, put it in his eyes. Loomis did the same thing later on. I thought this was good stuff. It was the weakest match on the card, but that's not a bad thing by any means. That's nothing to be ashamed of, because this show was pretty good. I'm going to give it a B. Joseph and Barrett, Stu Bennett, they show a Mattel WarGames TakeOver WarGames set, which is pretty dang cool looking. Then we get the lights flickering, and then a video of a vulture, and then you hear the words TikTok, which could mean only one thing. Karrion Kross could be coming back here very, very soon. Then we get the improbable champion Leon Ruff, the NXT North American champion, taking on Gargano and Damian Priest. And just to give you a brief title history, Gargano wins the title from Priest on October 18th. Then Gargano has a wheel of challengers to play off what shots he did at the spin the wheel, make a deal thing. It lands on Ruff. Ruff wins the title with a crucifix bomb on November 11th. Ruff is the NXT North American champion with the help of Damian Priest, as he provided a distraction. And then in the rematch between Priest and Gargano, Priest gets involved again. It hits Ruff to give Gargano the disqualification win, but for Ruff to retain. And Ruff eventually wants to take on both of them. And throughout this match, Priest is just trying to reason in this match as it's going on, the actual match from TakeOver. Priest is trying to give Ruff a pass. He is trying to give Ruff a pass, but it's eventually Ruff's just getting on his nerves enough that he's like, screw it, I'm just going to beat the crap out of this guy. And he eventually does, and he ends up hitting early on in the match, he ends up hitting a razor's edge through the barricade, taking Ruff out for about 5 or so minutes. And Gargano, he had to use his heelish ways. He had to get all the ghouls out after Ruff does return. Ruff hits a frog splash on Gargano after Priest chokeslams Gargano on the apron. Priest then grabs Ruff on the pinfall attempt, and then Priest beats the living crap out of Ruff. Priest then goes for wrecking after a Gargano escape attempt. They trade kicks, knocks Gargano down with another kick. Pipe shot by another masked man on a final reckoning attempt by Priest. These guys show up after Priest takes him out, and then Priest hits the chokeslam on the apron, followed by the Ruff frog splash. And then Ruff hits a roll-up attempt after the pipe shot on Priest. Then a super kick by Gargano, and then one final beat by Gargano gets it done. And Gargano is now a three-time NXT North American champion. I thought this was a pretty good match, pretty good stuff here. I thought Ruff looked really, really good. He's very, very undersized, but you know what? He's a very good underdog then. But Ruff loses Gargano's way. The Gargano way lives, and he will do what he pleases. And after the match, it was revealed that Austin Theory is the man. He was the guy with the crowbar, or with the pipe, as instead, to correct myself. But B+ grade for this match. I hope Ruff doesn't just completely drop down the card after this, as he was kind of a fluke champion. So hopefully we'll see Ruff continue to flourish in NXT instead of just dropping down the card. But who knows? Who knows? Then we get our main event. The Undisputed Era, Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, and Bobby Fish versus Team McAfee. Pat McAfee, Pete Dunne, Danny Burch, and Oney Lorcan. Now, I'll just start out with this. Pat McAfee is a great heel. Man, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing as a heel. While at times I think his selling was a bit off during this, he did really, really good. The dude freaking did a swanton off the cage at one point. I'll get to that a little bit later, but we have O'Reilly start out with Dunne. Dunne defeated O'Reilly in the ladder match a few weeks ago or a week ago, I think it was a couple weeks ago, to give the team, Pat McAfee the advantage. Lorcan enters next. There's a really good first few minutes, some groundwork, some submission wrestling from Dunne and O'Reilly. Lorcan enters next. And then we get Bobby Fish coming out with strikes, exploder on Dunne into Lorcan, spinebuster to Lorcan. Burch enters next. Team McAfee dominates, I think, for a pretty good portion of the first half of the match. Strong then comes in next. Burch and Lorcan blast him as soon as he enters. Then Strong hits some, does his forearm line where he runs into people, and then he actually hit a knee into the cage. I think it was on Dunne. And then Strong dropped into the cage by Oney Lorcan. Then Team McAfee's in complete control at this point. They're dominating Strong, Fish, and O'Reilly. And then it's just dissecting the team. And then McAfee finally gets to enter last. Grabs tables from under the ring, one with each Undisputed Era's member's name on it. He also threw in some chairs. Strong gets moonsaulted by McAfee through the table. Gosh, man, this is an agile punter. An agile punter, to say the least. By the way, I actually got the chance to interview him at one point in college. I got to ask him a couple of questions during our radio show. Sidebar for a second. Back to the match. Cole comes in finally, sprays the team with the fire extinguisher as he enters. Lots of stuff happening in here. They probably go about 20-25 more minutes after Cole enters the match. McAfee, at one point, these teams are staring each other down. The four of them are, and then there's three people for Team McAfee. And then Pat's on top of the cage, hits a swanton bomb, as we'd like to call it, off the top of the cage, taking out everybody. And it was a cool point where Dunne and Kyle O'Reilly pulled themselves up and they trade strikes, as these are the two that started the match. I thought this match had a little bit of overkill by the end of it. There was a lot. I felt like there could have been at least 5 or 6 minutes shaved off of it. But we get to this point. Burch stops Cole from hitting the Panama Sunrise. Fish then spears Burch through a table set up between the rings. McAfee ended up going through one of those tables, as did Strong. And Dunne and Burch went through one at one point too. Pat super kicks Cole. Pat gets super kicked then out of the air by Cole. Cole hits the Panama Sunrise, and Pat kicks out at 2, unlike their NXT TakeOver match where Pat got pinned by the Panama Sunrise. Lorcan then throws Pat out of the way, eats the last shot, enziguri by Dunne. Dunne then hits the bitter end on Cole with his midsection hitting first onto the chair that was set up in the ring. Looked freaking nasty. Then a suplex backbreaker by Roderick Strong on Pete Dunne. Lorcan misses with the chair, tripped by Fish, with Strong kicking the chair into Lorcan's face. And then Kyle O'Reilly finishes things off with a knee drop on Lorcan with the chair on his face. I thought that was a bit... Excuse me, my bad. Had to burp there. I just had some cookies a few minutes ago. But he knee drops Lorcan with the chair on his face. And I just thought the finish was a bit anticlimactic. It was a good WarGames match. I'm going to bring something up here in a moment that might irk some people. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm going to give this a B+, this War Games match. I thought this was a pretty good match. Pretty good War Games match. I honestly thought it could have benefited from having a few minutes shaved off of it also. But I got to say, Pat McAfee did his thing in there. Surprised me once again. But I shouldn't be surprised at this point because Pat knows what the hell he's doing. Or at least he looks like he knows what the hell he's doing. And I respect the heck out of him for it. But the finish, I just thought was kind of and they could have shaved a few minutes off of it. But I still thought this was a really good match, and I liked that they actually stayed with the Undisputed Era here. But it's not the end. It's not the end of it, I don't think. I think Pat's team, Pat's guys will get the upper hand eventually. It's still the Undisputed Era's yard, as you would like to call it. And won't be for long, though, I don't think. But still, good match to close out the show. The Women's War Games match was definitely the match of the night, in my opinion. And this brings me to my final grade for the show. I'm going to give the show a B+. And honestly, there were no bad matches here. The worst match of the night was Dexter Lumis and Cameron Grimes. And a B grade for the worst match on the show is a pretty darn good thing. But I really liked each match on the show in their own special way. Yeah, a couple minutes could have been shaved off of each match. The Ciampa Thatcher match and then the final War Games match. But those are just minor complaints. And Women's War Game match of the night for sure. And the War Games match, this is where I might irk some people. The War Games match, I think, is losing a little bit of its luster. And hear me out on this. Hear me out. It's not feeling like Hell in a Cell. They do a good job of building up these matches as personal feuds. But I feel like the setup is a little bit telegraphed because it gets to this point in the year and it's like, oh, we're going to have a War Games matches. It's like, okay, they've done about, they've done about 5 or 6 of these War Games matches now. So you got to kind of just use them for a special occasion, not make them a theme of the pay-per-view, because that's what the issue with the main roster is at times, because they do the tables, ladders, and chairs themed pay-per-view. They do the I'm losing my train of thought here for a second. Hell in a Cell, that's what it was. Hell in a Cell, which resulted in the Hell in a Cell match getting watered down. We don't want that with the War Games match. We got to make it feel special every time. So just sprinkle these in on occasion. And don't have a annual pay-per-view every year dedicated to these matches. Even though they're just 2 matches on the card, they're 2 of the 5 matches that were on this one for NXT TakeOver WarGames. I hope they also stop over-relying on weapons. They use the weapons a lot more in this match than I think they did the cage. The cage is there to keep the guys in, but they're not. I didn't think they used it quite enough. But the weapons were fine. Just a little bit of coolant on the weapons, but still, these War Games matches are always really good. Anyway, but that's just my take on it. Just need to make War Games a little more special and have it maybe happen once every year, one War Games match every year, or just spread them out during the year and don't telegraph the feuds into a War Games match. Just do that. But they did a good job of building these feuds up for the War Games matches. Just we'll see. We'll see what they do with it going forward. I hope they don't water it down like they've done the stuff on the main roster with the TLC pay-per-view and the Hell in a Cell. But this pay-per-view was definitely good. B+ grade for me, from me, on NXT TakeOver WarGames 2020. I hope you enjoyed this review If you enjoyed this review, want to hear my other pay-per-view reviews, find them in the archives on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcast, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you get your podcast. Also, follow me on Facebook and Twitter at SigDaddyWrestle. Also on Instagram at SigDaddy.Wrestle. Coming up next Monday will be the week in review. Also coming up here sometime soon will be my look back on AEW Dynamite's first year on TNT, along with the year in review with my special year in review, 2020 awards. Until next time, this is Sig Daddy signing off. Thanks for listening, and so long, everybody.